So Bernie Sanders wins the New Hampshire primary, but is still somehow losing. That is what is going on right now. Sanders is actually behind in the national delegate count. Let's go over this. Even though he won the popular vote in Iowa, the popular vote in New Hampshire, he is still down by one or two national state delegates, depending on how you look at it. It depends on really what happens with Iowa, actually. Iowa, they originally gave Pete Buttigieg 14 delegates. They gave Sanders 12 delegates. Iowa then, because of the calls for a recanvassing or a recount, essentially, Iowa has decided to reserve one of Pete Buttigieg's state delegates. So now he's at 13, Sanders is at 12, and they'll do what they will with that last state delegate depending on how the recanvassing turns out. But they're anticipating that Pete Buttigieg will get that delegate after all. He'll end up with 14, Sanders with 12. And what happened last night in New Hampshire? Here it is. Bernie Sanders wins by a popular vote win, 75,404 votes to Pete Buttigieg's 71,462 votes. Now, the New Hampshire primary does operate on an actual, it's a vote. So it's the popular vote. It's not a caucus like the way Iowa does it. So Bernie Sanders wins. And yet, look at this, the pledged delegates. Sanders gets 9. Buttigieg also gets 9, even though he's down by 4,000 votes. And Klobuchar, the surprise third place yesterday, she actually gets 6, and no other candidates receive any delegates whatsoever. Warren didn't get any. Biden didn't get any. Unfortunately, Tulsi Gabbard didn't get any delegates that would have qualified her for the upcoming CNN debate. So because Sanders gets 9, Buttigieg gets 9, and in Iowa, Buttigieg ended up with 13 or 14, and Sanders gets 12. You've got Buttigieg still winning in the national delegates race and Sanders behind, even though more Democrats have voted for Bernie Sanders. More Democrats want Bernie Sanders as their nominee than Pete Buttigieg. And yet, right now, as it stands, Pete Buttigieg would get the nomination. I mean, if this is, I don't know what you want to call it. A lot of people are calling it rigged. I mean, it certainly feels that way. So let's go over a little bit more of what happened last night. Now, the big story coming out of New Hampshire is not that Bernie Sanders wins. Of course, they need to spin it in some other way. So the big story that has come out of New Hampshire is look at the numbers between Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar. Buttigieg gets 71,464 votes. Klobuchar gets 57,979. Now, the story coming out is, look at these numbers. It turns out America wants a centrist. So I was wrong in my prediction. I thought Elizabeth Warren would still nab that third place spot. I thought that she would still edge out Klobuchar and get that third place positioning. And it turns out she did half as well as Klobuchar. It was pretty much clobbered by Klobuchar. But that depends on, I'm not going to be a big old conspiracy theorist, and I don't want to peddle conspiracy theories by any means. But if I were going to peddle one, I would say, look, all eyeballs are on Sanders. All eyeballs are on Buttigieg. After what happened in Iowa, everybody's looking really intensely at those two campaigns and looking for any sort of semblance of rigging, right? People are looking for foul play amongst those two campaigns. But nobody is looking at Klobuchar and Warren. Nobody. And if I were a really smart person with the ability to rig, if I had this, again, I'm not trying to peddle a conspiracy theory, but those are the campaigns that I would rig at this point. I would steal from Warren and give to Klobuchar because it allows you the narrative of America wants a centrist. And that is the narrative that the establishment needs if they are going to rob Sanders of the nomination come the convention. They need to be able to paint a story or paint a picture or tell a story of America doesn't want a far left progressive like Bernie Sanders. America's not ready for his policies. America wants somebody in the middle. And if they can prove that with numbers, or if they can show that with numbers, then they've got a better case to say, you know what, whoever ends up giving their delegates, maybe the super delegates, they'd say, well, Buttigieg has been in second this whole time, state after state. But when you combine Buttigieg and Klobuchar's numbers together, you get more people wanting a centrist than Bernie Sanders. So therefore, we're going to go ahead and give our superdelegate votes to Buttigieg. That's how this would play out. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to peddle a conspiracy theory, but because nobody's looking at those two campaigns, to me, it's very surprising Warren did as poorly as she did in a neighboring state to Massachusetts. She is a hero in Massachusetts. She's seen as a superstar. People in the New England area really like her. So it's very strange that Klobuchar coming out of Minnesota would suddenly beat out Warren in a state that was really largely for Sanders in the 2016 primary. So like I said, I'm not going to peddle any theories, but I'm just saying it's a bit suspicious that Klobuchar did as well as she did. And, that's all I'm going to say. So I think we should keep our eyes open going forward with the future campaigns and the future primaries and caucuses. What happens between those two campaigns? Because if they can paint that narrative, then that's how they end up robbing Bernie Sanders ultimately of the nomination. That's how they're going to do it.